Hello and welcome to Northwest Knitting. My name is Kathy and I'm so glad you tuned into my knitting podcast where I talk about wool and fiber and other textile related things I might get into, as well as a little bit about books and other things. So I'm very happy if you've come back. I have over 1,000 subscribers right now, which I think is wonderful. I just really appreciate you subscribing. And if you're new here, welcome to the program or channel, or me talking is what it is, really. So I have had, I keep saying this every time I come, oh wow, that was just, it's been such a long time because, well, I went down to visit my father, who's 99 years old, and he lives in the Bay Area in California, and I was visiting with him for a while, and then usually I drive down, it's about a 10-hour trip, so I drive down in pieces. I'll often stop in Ashland and spend the night. And that gives me a little time to stop at a yarn store called the Webster's, which is really great. So anyway, when I was returning, I just felt like I just want to go home. I wanted to go see the garden and see Dennis and come on home. So I did. So I drove and I got home around 9 o'clock at night, and the very next morning, I got a call from my daughter that she was in labor. So then I drove to their home and in the valley, and I picked up the baby car seat. And then I drove to Portland and was able to be present while my daughter was in labor and then had her baby. And so we have a healthy new granddaughter. And it was quite an experience. I've had 2 children, and I was awake and present for both of them, but I had never actually seen a birth, and wow, what a miracle. And it's a little traumatizing when it's your own baby. My baby was having a baby, but all is well. We have a beautiful granddaughter, and with that bringing everything that you know it brings, with people coming together and trying to help the family, and it's great. And of course, a little knitting. She came 3 weeks early, so I had not fully geared up. I do have a few little things, but I wasn't really ready for this little one. So anyway, that's my exciting news. So let me talk to you about my sweater. I'm sure I'll be getting back to babies shortly, but this is my Lento sweater designed by Jonna Hietala, I guess, and it was in Line magazine, issue number 11. So this sweater is suddenly getting real popular again, and I think it's like, I believe it has exactly the same gauge as the ranunculus. And so what the pattern calls for, and I did it, and in fact my color is very similar to the color she chose. I just loved it, and this has been my for the last 6 months, I've been really interested in this color. But anyway, she calls for a fingering weight yarn held with a lace weight mohair. And I used Brooklyn Tweed Loft. I talked about it last time quite a bit. And in the color Almanac. So it's a fingering weight woolen spun yarn. It is completely produced, grown, produced, processed, whatever, all in the United States, which is kind of unusual. And Beautiful color. So if you're interested in, you might just go look at the colors anyway. And as I mentioned last time, if you hold 2 strands of Loft, which is a fingering weight, together it equals a strand of Shelter, which is their worsted weight yarn. And then I held the Loft together with the Kidsilk by Yoriko Oki in the Indigo Constellation. So I don't know anything about the provenance of the mohair, but it is, I believe it's something like 75% mohair and the rest is silk. So very nice. I just absolutely adore the colorway it made. And after all my angst and whining last time, I did get another skein, 2 skeins actually, of the Indigo Constellation colorway. It turns out, well, it turns out I was so close. I might have been able to do without the yarn, but I'm happy to have it because I already know something else I'd love to match it with, and it'll look completely different. So the question is, do I have any more to show you? Yes. So again, I think I've shown this now 3 times, but this is the Brooklyn Tweed Loft in Almanac, and this is the mohair, the Indigo Constellation. So good. So, okay, so this is knit at 15 stitches for every 4 inches or 10 centimeters. She recommends size 10 needles and 6 for the ribbing. I use 9s and 6s. Now, when I was well underway with this, and this should go super fast. And as I predicted, because it's me, I don't know what, I was doing some other things, even though I'm usually pretty monogamous, but I did have a few other things going, but I'm just not a very fast knitter, is the reality. So in some ways that's good because I'm not churning out. Overconsumption is overconsumption, but the way I knit, we're not going fast enough to be a problem, I don't think. But anyway, it did take me a while for no good reason, except I did make it longer. So let me show you the length. We'll step back here. You can see it's kind of a sweatshirty design. When I started the sleeves, last time I talked to you about, I was worried about it, them being too wide in the sleeves, and it is wide, a little bigger up in the shoulders. I'm really narrow in the shoulders, so somebody who's got nice broad, I see all these young women in particular with really nice broad shoulders, this might fit very differently, but I do think it is meant to be a, a comfortable garment. I think the modifications I made were, I had 3 modifications. One, it is meant to be more cropped. And as you can see, I made it a little bit longer here. Not tunicky, really, but it is longer. And I used a twisted, boy, I can't remember if she does a twisted rib. But anyway, I did do a twisted rib for the bottom, which I think keeps it from, hugging in too much. And the other change I made was she has a folded over collar, which I really like the look of, but I was feeling so hot at the time I knit this that I made a 2x2 rib, which I really like. And as you can see, it's a little higher than some of the sweaters I make. So it'll be great for the winter. One thing, I do feel like my sleeves are a little it's funny when I looked at, like right now, okay, sleeves, perfect length. But there's something about this sweater. It stays up here. So I don't know. I might keep them, but they really do go up the minute I move my body. So I might add maybe, I don't know, 3 or 4 rows to the sleeves. We'll see. I haven't blocked it yet. So I shouldn't even show it to you, because to me, finished is when it's blocked. It looks so different often. And it just kind of, and also you've been knitting on it with, maybe you've been eating, who knows, but maybe you should just start fresh with this. And so I will block it pretty soon here. It's not really warm enough for us to be wearing clothing like this, but it's cool in the mornings, but it'll be pretty warm in the afternoon, and I'll be happy to have a short sleeve top on. So anyway, this is really fun. There's a lot of people making it right now, so I'm sure you could find all kinds of information on people's opinions. If you're thinking of making it, though, I just want to point out a blog piece that I read. Okay, I'm going to crinkle. Okay. So the designer who designed my the Ultimate Lazy cardigan that I did this spring, Ailbiona McLochlainn, she's based in Donegal, and she's got some great designs. So I'd really suggest checking her out if you haven't before. And she also has a blog, and she's a great writer, actually. And she has a whole blog post on knitting above gauge and selecting your yarn. And I thought that was really interesting, because I never really thought too much about what yarns you should use to knit above gauge. And of course, you know, you can do whatever you want and see what it looks like. But even if you don't swatch for size for this, if you're going beyond, if you're not picking something that's a little bit fluffy or woolens, I don't know. I'll tell you her suggestions. But if you go beyond that, you might want to swatch for sure, just to see if you really do like that fabric at that looser gauge. So she calls it knitting above gauge, because you're knitting the yarn that is really meant to be knitted tighter than the pattern calls for. So since this is a fingering weight, even with the lace, I think a more traditional gauge would be using something like, maybe with it together, the 6s might be a good one, something around that area, not 10s. So as we know, there's a lot of patterns. There's the ranunculus is just one of the big ones of the looser gauge. One of the first ones I knew about was the Stopover by Mary Jane McLochlainn, and I read so much about that. I really thought I was going to knit it, but it was knit bottom up, and I chickened out. And then I saw that that Mary Jane McLochlainn had designed a sweater called the Soul Bean, and that's a sweater I showed a number of episodes back. It's the my only steeking experience, and for that she recommended Let Lopey, and that was also for the Stopover as well. So knitting on size 10 needles, but with that, in fact, I think I have some. Almost everybody knows Let Lopey. Whoa, we'll just leave that there. But, you know, big fluffy yarn. It's, I think it's Aran weight. But I've seen it called different things. But to me, it's Aran. It's got a lot of bought a fluff to it. And I'm trying to think of what, but those are the ones I'm thinking of. The ranunculus, the stopover, and some other ones. And this is another one to add to the list. So if you're looking for one of the basic patterns, you might be reaching for like, a lot of people do the no frills sweater or the classic cozy raglan, I think. This, if you want a big gauge, if a looser gauge and bigger needles, this is a good choice. Okay, but just to get back to Ailbiona and her blog post, some of the yarns she suggests are unspun wool, let lopi, cashmere, mohair, or chainette. Now, many people are not going to pick anything in that category, but the reason she recommends them is she just designed a sweater coat. She calls it the nostalgic sweater coat. And so it's pretty long. I mean, you can knit it any length, but I think she designed it to be at least past the knee. And her point was that if you use something like a superwash merino or any merino, it would be very heavy. And these other ones she's talking about, obviously the mohair with fingering is very lightweight. Plus I used a woolen spun fingering yarn, let lopi, unspun. All those are very light. You're going to come out with a very lightweight sweater. And if you had a long sweater coat, it would be nice to not have it be really heavy and pulling down. So anyway, I'll put the link down below, and I think it would be worth taking a look at her blog post. Okay, so I actually do have another finished object. I think I was working on it when I last talked to you. This one is Petite Knits Ellen's Coming Home set. Little baby came too quickly. My little granddaughter came too quickly to have a coming home set. And this is probably this is way too big. This is going to be, I think, more like 3 months size. But here it is. It's actually, I'm calling it finished, but it doesn't have the buttons. So this will come down here. It's another one of those where it comes down here. And it's just and I haven't blocked it. So again, really not finished, but we're going to cheat and call it finished for you. And here's the pattern. And here's the baby, almost as cute as my granddaughter. So anyway, a sweet little knit. And it also comes, you know, with the pants. So I think I will go ahead and finish the pants. I have plenty of the yarn. So what I used was the Sandnes Garn SMART. It's a super wash, and it's a Norwegian wool, and it's medium brown. You can see. There's an interesting thing on this label, and if you have anything to tell me about it, I'd appreciate it. It says 100% wool, use wool detergent, avoid wash bag and fabric softener. Well, I totally understand why you'd want to avoid fabric softener, but if you know why I should avoid the wash bag, they are plastic, so it is going into our water supply. I don't know. I've been fond of the idea of giving a little baby gift in a new wash bag. So little, you know, just, I'm talking about those little laundry bags, and you put the clothing inside and you zip it up, and then it just protects it more. But anyway, I do not know. Now, the yarn. I like the yarn, and I like the pattern. But So the pattern calls for DK, and this is a DK. However, the gauge is 23 stitches for 10 centimeters or 4 inches, and she recommends using size 3 and 3.5 millimeter, which here we call size 2.5 and 4. I don't have 2.5, so I use 2s for the ribbing. But this, and I usually go down a size in the needle selection. This yarn, this brown yarn, it felt so thick to me that even knitting on size 5s just felt really dense. So I kind of wish I had used size. I think it feels okay now. I don't know, but it just, boy, when I was knitting, it just felt really dense to me. I don't know. So anyway, but it is a really nice yarn. There's they have some nice colors. That whole Sandnes Garn color selection, I think, is similar in a lot of the yarns they have. But anyway, it's a sweet little pattern, and I made the same mistake on both sleeves, and I decided against pulling it out. I couldn't believe it. I made the mistake on one side and decided, okay, I'm not going back. I'm going to go forward. And then I did the exact same thing on the other side, not on purpose. But what it was I had finished my ribbing down here. So I was on the size 2 needles. So then I forgot to change my needle size when I picked up the sleeve stitches. So I had about 2 or 3 rows on size 2 needles. I can tell it goes in just slightly there. And then I get down, I do the ribbing. So I get to the ribbing, I switch to size 2 needles from the 5s. And then I again pick up the sleeve stitches with size 2. Honestly, knitting is an adventure when you are not thinking. So anyway, it's all fine, and I think it'll be sweet. And they like these earthy tones, and I noticed they had a lot of hand-me-downs that were these earthy tones. So I'll probably sneak in some blues and pinks and some other things in there. But right now, we're going earthy. But it's a nice brown. And for a September, she was supposed to be an October baby, but what did we decide? She's a Virgo. Anyway, fun project, and it goes pretty fast. So I haven't made pants before, but I'm kind of excited to give those a try. So that'll be fun. Okay, now last time I talked to you quite a bit about the Salt and Timber book, Knits from the Northern Coast by Lindsey, Fowler, produced by Lena, and which I bought, and I was real excited, and I am real excited about it. So I started 2 shawls from there, and I really got into this one. I always seem to, I might start multiple things, but then I veer in one particular direction. So the one I'm working on is the Cape Lookout shawl. And what I was thinking about last time was what yarn to use. So here's the shawl. Oh, this might be better. I don't know if you can see, but the unusual thing about it is that unusual thing about it is that you do it's a triangle shawl, and you do half with just fingering weight yarn, and then when you get to this part, you pick up a strand of mohair. And what I was telling you last time is that I wanted this yarn to be the main color. And I wanted to make sure I had a very light yarn to match. I didn't want an intense contrast. And I feel pretty happy with what I chose. The main yarn is the Jaggerspun Heather. It's a fingering weight yarn, 100% wool. It's almost 500 yards, and it's in the Wisteria colorway. So it's pink, but it's got a little bit of blue in it. One of you viewers suggested doing a blue as a contrast, and I had some, so I really went back and forth on that, and I almost did that. I had some blue, lighter blue mohair. I don't see it here, but I had some lighter blue mohair. And when I went to Webster's in Ashland to look at their yarn, that was one of my main purposes or excuses for going there. And I had two different blue colorways of Le Biche Bouche Petite mohair, and I thought one that was almost a light bluish gray might be a good choice. But then I went over to their area that had all their Rowan yarns, and they had Kidsilk Haze, and so that's what this contrast color is. It's Kidsilk, which I'm sure you've all seen before. And this is 70% mohair, 30% silk. So that's a Rowan, which everybody knows. Rowan, I'm sure, have come across one way or another. One of my favorite yarns is Rowan Felted Tweed. So anyway, yeah, I got this from Woolly Thistle and really like their colorways. It's fingering weight, and it's a very fine yarn, I think. So I am knitting this on the recommended needles, which is, okay, these are size 6 needles. So actually here we are knitting above gauge again. You can see it's pretty ethereal, really, but and sometimes that would not appeal to me, but it really does for this very light pinky color. And then I think they both have they're tonals, both of them, and you can see some color variation there with the mohair. So what else was it? It's knit at, the gauge is 19.5 stitches per 4 inches or 10 centimeters. So, yeah, little bigger gauge than you'd expect, at least for this fingering weight yarn. And then it really does feel significantly different. So I was kind of on the fence on whether I wanted to do what was proposed, this double, but I think I will mostly not be just holding my shawl like this. I'll probably mostly have it around my neck or back, or so it'll be nice to have 2 different colors to show off. And it's super lightweight, and I noticed that I lean to picking up my lighter weight shawls rather than my mine that are heavier. So I don't know how you feel about that yourselves, but I guess if I were cuddled up on the couch, I'd want something heavier, but when I'm just around, I do like to, I'm more inclined to reach for those lighter shawls. Oh, this is my new cup. I'm so excited. I got it at Webster's. Can you see? These are balls of yarn. Hold up. I'm facing my French doors are right there behind you. Behind me. Well, I'm facing them. And if, so that is what is causing this reflection here. And also the light's changing, but you can see these little balls of yarn there. And I love these colors. So that's really fun. Let's see, what else can I tell you about? Oh, one thing I want to mention, but I do like this, and I think this is a nifty idea, but I have quite a number of times found that I have forgotten when I get to this, when I'm going along, I have the two yarns together, I have forgotten to drop my mohair when I get here. So I'm trying to be more careful because unpicking it is not that much fun. But anyway, I'm really enjoying this. So let me think, I do have some other things going, but I've already talked about them quite a bit. I have another shawl in the set Adrift shawl in the Salt and Timber, but I haven't made one bit of progress because now I'm really I really feel like picking up mohair. It feels really good. And the other thing I did is I have that sweater, that Shetland sweater that I'm using the cone for. The cone here, and I'm doing that colorwork sweater. It's called the Strom cardigan. I believe it's Rachel Hunter, and it was from the I think Shetland 2020. I talk about this in the last podcast, so I'm pretty sure it was the Shetland 2020 that it's in, and I've been meaning to make it for a long time. So I did look at Webster's to see if there were any other. They have a whole selection of Jameson and Smith, and I was looking to see if I preferred any of them, of those colors. So I was thinking this as one of my big pink contrast colors. And then I ended up getting 3 more of the Jameson. I think this is pretty similar though. So they're just like candy. They don't cost that much. And you just feel like, oh, I could just have another one and another one. But anyway, I thought the sweater would benefit from having a little bit darker reddish, pinkish color in there. So anyway, we'll see. I'm still swatching and trying to settle on what I might go for. So let me think. Okay, I'm moving along faster than usual, and I think I might just make it a little bit shorter. There's a little, one thing about wool and sweaters is that I have a few, this chair needs to be sanded because there's something here that keeps catching. But okay, there was one, okay, I wanted to talk about 2 more things. Hi, I had a problem getting cut off, so I'm hoping I can add this on to the end of my podcast. I just wanted to add 2 things. One is, as everybody knows, Queen Elizabeth II passed away recently, and she was Queen of the UK all of my life, not adult life, my life, and had an extraordinary life. And of course, has just been followed so closely by everyone around the world throughout her whole life. And with her passing, Prince Charles becomes King Charles III. And I mention him because he is an environmentalist and is a patron of the Campaign for Wool, which is an organization in the UK. And there's a quote from him, and basically, to summarize it, he says that if we're going to meet the goals for the fashion industry in terms of climate change, then we have to make some changes. And the change he promotes is using more wool rather than fibers made out of fossil fuels. There is a video that you can find on the website of Campaign for Wool, and I'll put the link below. And he is in that at one point in the film. It's not very long. I think it might be like 15 minutes, something like that. And he's in it and showing an experiment where they bury some acrylic sweater and then a wool sweater and dig it up 4 months later, and the wool sweater is on its way to biodegrading and the acrylic sweater is still looking pretty good. So anyway, I mention that because as wool lovers, we might feel kind of excited about having somebody who is such a patron of wool. Whether he'll be able to do any of that environmental work now that he's king is unclear. I don't think he's supposed to, but I hope he does. I hope he defies convention and the rules. The other thing is I wanted to recommend a book, and this is one of my favorite, it's on my favorite books shelf. And it's a little book that came out in 2007 called The Uncommon Reader by Alan Bennett. And Alan Bennett is a dramatist in the UK, and he won Tony Awards for his stage play called The History Boys, which I'm not familiar with, but you might be. And the one thing I am familiar with is he wrote a stage play called The Lady in the Van, and they made a movie out of it starring Maggie Smith, and I enjoyed that. Anyway, the premise of this book is that the Queen in real life was not an avid reader. And I don't know that to be true or not. How would I know? But the premise of the book is that she was not an avid reader, but this book imagines that she becomes one in the process of the book. And it starts when she is chasing her corgis, and they go out of Buckingham Palace, and I think one of them goes on to, there's a bookmobile outside of the palace, and they go on board, I think. Something like that is how it starts. In the UK, I think they call it a mobile library, but here we'd say bookmobile. And she ends up borrowing a book because she feels like she should. Her sense of duty is strong, and she talks pleasantly with the people on board and ends up reading the book, returning it, and then reading more and becomes the kind of reader that keeps a paperback book in her purse in case things get boring. And as you can imagine, this might cause some problems for somebody who must do the things, the social engagements that she must do. So I found it quite charming and delightful. I did not think it was disrespectful. I suppose somebody could disagree on that, but I really enjoyed it, and it's a wonderful idea of it's more of a celebration of reading and what reading might do for you as a human. So anyway, I really enjoyed it. My book shows things backwards, but this is the book, very thin, and you might like it too. So okay, I'm going to wrap it up and hope that I can fit this on nicely without having to re-record anything. And I will see you, I hope, in just a couple weeks. So we'll see. I hope so. Anyway, have a wonderful time with you. The things are changing outside. It's fall. I can tell that even though we're going to have some hot weather in the next week, it's generally getting cooler, and I love it when it's in the 70s and even into the 60s. We get to wear sweaters, and it's just not so that kind of heat that sometimes makes everything more difficult. So anyway, you have a good 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Take care.